three friends, Dika, Andy, and Reza, were excitedly planning their weekend getaway. Their destination was a remote forest deep in the interior, a place famous for its natural beauty, tranquil river, and dense forest rarely visited by humans. They brought along basic equipment such as fishing gear, hunting rifles, and a small tent, and paddled down the river in a boat that led deep into the forest. The day was bright, with a gentle breeze adding to the peaceful atmosphere. They finally reached the riverbank near noon. The spot they had chosen was ideal, a small clearing surrounded by giant trees. They quickly set up their tent while Reza prepared his fishing rod by the river. The forest felt alive yet silent at the same time. Small sounds came from the leaves, but there was no sign of anyone else around. Once the tent was set, they decided to start hunting. Guns ready in hand, they ventured into the forest to find prey for their evening meal. The large trees blocked out the sunlight, making it somewhat dark, even though it was still daytime. But the three of them remained calm. Their footsteps broke the dry branches beneath them, while occasional rustling from the bushes indicated the presence of animals around them. After nearly an hour of walking, they stopped abruptly at the sight of something moving swiftly between the trees. A wild boar appeared, its eyes alert as it stared in their direction. Reza, holding the rifle, quickly aimed it at the boar. Without hesitation, Reza pulled the trigger. The gunshot shattered the silence of the forest, and the boar collapsed. The three of them rushed over, satisfaction evident on their faces. "This will make a perfect dinner," Reza said with a smile as he examined their catch. After preparing the boar, they returned to the riverbank with the fish they had caught. As evening approached, they lit a campfire to cook the wild boar. Dika started the fire, while Andy busily chopped wood for extra fuel. Reza sat by the river, gazing at the calm water and cracking jokes occasionally. As night deepened, the atmosphere changed. The forest, once peaceful, now felt darker, colder, and the wind that had been soft became stronger. However, for those used to the wilderness, these changes were still considered normal, a part of the experience. They sat around the campfire, chatting as they enjoyed the aroma of grilled boar and fish. Their conversation eventually drifted into odd, imaginative topics, discussing a beautiful woman, a common fantasy among adventurers. Dika laughed. "Imagine if a beautiful girl suddenly appeared from the darkness," he said, pointing to the pitch-black forest surrounding them. Andy and Reza joined in the laughter. "I wouldn't mind if that happened," Andy replied, stirring the fire. "Just make sure she's not a Kuntilanak." Their laughter pierced the silence of the night, but abruptly stopped when they heard slow footsteps coming from the forest. The three friends exchanged glances, as if seeking confirmation that they had all heard the same thing. "What was that?" whispered Reza. Out of the shadows of the trees emerged a woman. Her white dress starkly contrasted with the dark forest, and her long black hair covered part of her face. The three of them froze, unsure of how to react. Fear gripped them, but at the same time, disbelief washed over them. A woman in the middle of a remote forest? Who is she? How could she be here? Andy asked quietly. Dika, usually the bravest, stood up hesitantly and approached the woman. "Hello, who are you? How did you get here?" he asked in a curious tone, but the woman didn't answer. She only gave a faint smile as if she was enjoying their confusion. However, the closer Dika got, the more sinister the atmosphere became. Cold air suddenly enveloped them, and the campfire trembled as if it would go out. The faint fear they had felt now became real. The woman began to change. Her smile vanished, her once beautiful face paled, her black eyes peeked out from beneath her hair, and her nails grew long and sharp like claws. In a flash, the woman lunged at Dika. Her long claws slashed across his chest, causing blood to gush out. Dika collapsed, groaning in pain before going still, motionless. "Andy, run!" Reza yelled, grabbing Andy's hand and running toward their boat by the river. But their steps grew heavier, and behind them echoed the terrifying laugh of the Kuntilanak, chilling and endless. They reached the boat, but Andy flipped it over, and they ducked under the boat in the water for shelter. The Kuntilanak stood above the boat, scratching it, her eerie voice echoing. No matter how hard she clawed, Andy and Reza remained safe and untouched. That night, they could only hope the boat would carry them to the village. By dawn, battered and soaked, they reached the village. The Kuntilanak that had chased them was no longer visible. That night became a nightmare that Andy and Reza would never forget, one that would forever haunt them. The once beautiful forest had transformed into a place of terror. The message of this story is clear. Wherever we are, we must adjust and watch our words, for we never know what might happen if our words come true, turning an innocent experience into a horrifying one. In a remote village far from the bustle of the city, there was a chilling legend. The locals believed in the existence of a shapeshifter known as the Buffalo Ghost. Unlike Kuyang or other spirits, the Buffalo Ghost was a human who could transform into a horrifying creature. A large black buffalo with bulging eyes, a bloated stomach, and a long, lolling tongue. Its breath was heavy, accompanied by a suffocating stench. This story begins on a quiet night when a young man named Bayu and his two friends, Weera and Anton, decided to camp on the edge of the forest. They had heard stories about the Buffalo Ghost from villagers, but like most young people, they dismissed them as mere superstition. How many times have we heard about the Buffalo Ghost? There's no way a person can turn into a buffalo, joked Weera as he set up the tent. Don't be so sure, Weir. Many people in this village claim to have seen it, Anton replied cautiously. Bayu only smiled at their small debate. He wasn't entirely sure, but that night, he suddenly felt a chill. The air felt colder than usual, and there was a strange smell, like wet earth mixed with rot, faint but noticeable. But Bayu brushed off the thought and continued helping his friends. As the night deepened, the usual sounds of the forest grew silent. The noises of nocturnal animals gradually faded, leaving an eerie stillness. In the middle of that silence, they heard something coming from the darkness of the forest. The sound of a buffalo drinking water, accompanied by heavy, gasping breaths. Bayu froze, his body stiff. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Weera and Anton fell silent, their eyes wide. The sound grew closer. When they turned towards the noise, a large black figure emerged from the forest. The Buffalo Ghost stood tall, larger than an ordinary buffalo with bulging eyes and a swollen belly. Its long tongue lolled out, licking the air with a sickening sound. Its heavy breathing filled the air. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, becoming unstable. Weera and Anton shook with fear, their bodies stiff and paralyzed by sheer terror. They couldn't move. "We have to run," Bayu shouted, trying to gather his wits. But every step felt heavy, as if the ground was sucking in his feet. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Ghost drew closer, its bulging eyes fixated on them. As the creature reached them, its long tongue began licking Anton's body. Poor Anton fainted instantly, collapsing helplessly to the ground. Weera, still half-conscious, felt a heavy weight pressing down on his neck. His breath became labored before he too fell unconscious. Bayu, now the only one left, tried to call out to his friends, but they didn't respond. With all his remaining strength, he ran as fast as he could, but every step felt labored, as if the ground was constantly shifting beneath him. The Buffalo Ghost kept chasing, its heavy breaths growing louder, and the foul stench filled Bayu's nose. Bayu finally reached the edge of the forest, but the sound of the creature continued behind him. The lolling tongue seemed to reach for his back, but suddenly, the sound vanished. The creature was gone. Bayu collapsed on the ground of the village, gasping for air. He was safe, but his friends were not. A few days later, Anton fell ill for no apparent reason. His body wasted away, his face pale, and no one could cure him. One night, Anton passed away, his face filled with fear. The village elders believed that his soul had been stolen by the Buffalo Ghost. They warned that the creature would never stop. The Buffalo Ghost would continue searching for prey, especially those with fear in their hearts. Those who had encountered the creature would be haunted, until their will to live was drained completely. In a remote village deep in the heart of Kalimantan lived a woman named Lila. She was known for being kind and humble, but there was something mysterious about her. Every night, the villagers often heard strange noises, as if something was flying through the air, but no one dared to speak of it aloud. The village had long been shrouded in scary tales about the Kuyang, a terrifying shape-shifting creature. Kuyang was not an ordinary ghost. It was the spirit of a human, particularly a woman seeking power or immortality through black magic. At night, the Kuyang's head would detach from its body, flying around with its dangling internal organs, searching for the blood of newborns or pregnant women to feed on. The village was constantly haunted by this myth, though no one truly knew who among them might be the Kuyang. One night, this frightening tale became a reality for a local family, that of a villager named Sari. Sari, who was heavily pregnant, often felt as if someone was watching her house whenever night fell. She frequently heard faint sounds on the roof, like something flying by. At first, she thought it was just the wind or a wild animal. But that night was different. The noise grew louder, accompanied by an unnatural hissing sound, like the heavy breathing of a bloodthirsty creature. Her husband, Budi, also sensed something strange and decided to stay up that night. Armed with a machete, he sat in the front room, ready to protect his wife from whatever might come. It was well past midnight, and the forest surrounding the village was eerily silent. No wind, no sound of night birds. Then suddenly, Budi heard something on the roof, like something crawling, with a dragging and squeaking sound. Is that a rat? He thought. But when he went outside to check, he saw something that left him stunned. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a shadow hovering low in the sky, a human head with long flowing hair and its bloody organs dangling. The creature circled the house, looking for a way to get inside. "Kuyang!" he whispered in panic. He quickly ran back into the house, ensuring all the windows and doors were tightly shut. He knew the creature was trying to find a way to get to his wife's blood. Meanwhile, inside the bedroom, Sari felt something strange. The air in the room suddenly turned cold. Her hair stood on end, and her neck felt heavy. Her heart pounded in her chest. She tried to call out to her husband, but her voice was caught in her throat. Her eyes fixed on the window, and there she saw it. Two glowing red eyes staring back at her. The creature, Kuyang, was clinging to the window, its mouth wide open, its tongue hanging out, ready to break through the glass to get to Sari's blood. Budi rushed into the room and saw the creature. Without hesitation, he swung his machete towards the window, but the Kuyang moved swiftly, flying away with a terrifying hiss. That night, the Kuyang was not seen again. Budi knew that the creature would return. They had to seek help from the village elder. The next day, they went to the village shaman, who was known to have powers to combat black magic. The shaman gave them several charms and protections, including special leaves that had to be hung around the house to repel the Kuyang. The following night, the atmosphere grew more tense. Strong winds blew, and the hissing sound of the creature could be heard once more. This time, Budi was ready with the charms and protection given by the shaman. He waited in front of the house, his eyes sharp, watching every corner. Suddenly, from behind the trees, the creature reappeared. The head with its floating organs flew towards their house. But this time, as it drew near, the Kuyang was stopped. The leaves and charms placed around the house emitted a faint glow, causing the creature to shriek in pain. The Kuyang tried to come closer, but the more it tried, the stronger the light that repelled it became. Angrily, the Kuyang disappeared into the dark night, its hissing breath echoing in the distance. But Budi and Sari knew this wasn't over. The Kuyang would always return until it got what it wanted. A few days later, news spread through the village that Lila, the mysterious woman who often kept to herself, had suddenly fallen ill. Her body was weak, her skin pale, and no one could explain her illness. People began whispering, suspecting that Lila was the Kuyang that had been terrorizing the village. They knew that without its original body, the Kuyang would become weak and powerless. However, before anyone could confirm this, Lila vanished. Her house was empty, with no trace left behind. The villagers were terrified, knowing that as long as the Kuyang's original body was not found and destroyed, the creature would continue to roam, searching for its next victim.